It is now my pleasure to get tonight's reading started by introducing our first reader, fiction writer Martin Cozza. I first had the pleasure of working with Martin in the 2004-2005 Mentor series when he was one of the writers selected by fiction mentors Allison McGee and Mark Weingardner. And it's reassuring to me as program administrator that that experience didn't scare him away and that he was willing to return for another go at the program. At that time, Martin was the stay-at-home dad of 2 children. This go-around, he is the stay-at-home dad of 3. In seminar this morning, Samantha said that for artists, there is really exponential growth of children, and that having 2 kids is really the equivalent of 4, and having 3 is the equivalent of 9. Oh no, Martin reassured her, it's 12. He takes care of the children during the day and works as a science editor by night, and somewhere in between there, he manages to work not only on fiction for adult readers, but also on a middle grade novel. Please welcome Martin Cozza.
Thank you, Jared. And thanks to the Jerome Foundation for funding this program. It's really a local treasure. I'm happy to come back a second time, and I'd come back a third if I could. Thanks to the Loft, and especially Jared Santek for administering the program so lovingly and perfectly. All of us involved really appreciate it. This is a short story of mine that I'd like to read. If I hop to it, I can read the whole thing in the time I have, so here goes. The title is Trip to Falls. It is August 1st, 1973, and my mother waits for the check to come from the United States Treasury in its stiff yellow envelope. Every month, a check comes, $110 for each child. There are 4 children. I'm number 4, but nothing for the widow. In each of the past 4 months, she has set aside $70 from our check, knowing that we have to go somewhere this summer, our first summer after my father has died. Other families would call it a vacation, but my mother, this summer, just calls it going somewhere. Vacation sounds too much like freedom, like fun. People on vacation wear sunglasses and eat steak dinners and laugh with food in their mouths. She thinks of the first vacation she ever had, her honeymoon with my father in Virginia Beach in 1953, when she, wearing a straw hat with a wavy brim, and my father, Stuart, now finally her lover, knelt side by side on a dock to peer between boards at the sea. The feel of the sun-warmed boards, their creak and gentle give, reminded her of 2 things she trusted: the porch of the farmhouse she grew up in, and the planks of the bridge over Slippery Rock Creek. Between the boards, she saw the seawater up close, with its hypnotic, swelling surface and the galactic depths beneath, so different from the sandy creek bottom or the blank dirt under the porch. Stuart, my father, traced his fingertip across her back. She remembers this exactly, and said, his voice quiet and plain, "Irene, I missed you. You were gone for 5 minutes buying that hat, and I missed you." Now my mother's looking out through the screen door, waiting, when our mailman comes up the sidewalk in his uniform shorts and high socks. She can see the yellow envelope in the mail he's holding. It is there, among a bill from Sears, a TV guide, and this week's Pittsburgh Catholic, which all still come in my father's name. Tonight, I will peel off the address labels that say Mr. Stuart Caprio and take them up to my room, where I've been taping them in a notebook in staggered rows like bricks. I've filled almost 3 pages, and the repetition is startling to see. It is still early enough in the day to take the Social Security check over to Citizens Bank and get it cashed, and my mother does this, going to a teller named Linda Tilden, who looks like she should still be in high school. She has roundish glasses, tinted light purple, and curly, brass-colored hair. Linda Tilden is new. This is her first job out of high school, and my mother has never seen her before. But in 6 years, Linda will marry my cousin, Willie. Linda and Willie will get divorced after a year, and Linda will marry a second time to a troubled man named Rob, who will commit suicide by shooting himself in a church. Not long after this happens, this suicide, my mother will go to the bank and wait in Linda's line, and when she gets to the window and looks in Linda's eyes, and Linda recognizes my mother, their faces will soften, two widows, and my mother will reach under the bars of the teller window and clasp Linda's hand. Linda will whisper to her, "How do you stand it? How can you ever stand it?" And my mother will say something that Linda has heard 100 times already, something about waking up every morning and getting through one day, but coming from my mother, this advice will be true. My dead father will view this scene from above. We'll see Linda and my mother clasping hands under the line of teller bars. We'll see the bills lined up in the open money drawer beside Linda and the line of 6 people standing behind my mother. My father will know that his wife, Irene, my mother, is doing well by holding Linda's hands, is truly helping Linda. He will know that my mother is good, which he had always believed when he was living, but which now he knows absolutely. Knowing things absolutely will be one of the better features of being dead, although it will frustrate him to know but not have any influence except in slight or oblique ways. He'll know, for example, that his nephew Willie, my cousin, is too temperamental to be married to Linda Tilden, and that their marriage will last only a year, 11 months really. He'll know that Willie will decide to get married because he thinks his parents and aunts and uncles want him to get married. He thinks they expect him to keep working at the sheet and tube and stop wasting time with that electric guitar. My father, Willie's uncle, will try to warn Willie by shaping the angry notes that come out when he sits in his room on the end of his bed, writing songs on his electric guitar, but the screeching notes won't be enough to convince Willie that he truly doesn't want to be married. These notes will be the best that my father can do, but they won't be enough to convince Willie of the truth that my father knows absolutely. But now, on August 1st, 1973, it is still long before Willie and Linda Tilden have met. My mother is standing at the teller window, folding and refolding the stiff yellow envelope, noticing Linda only because she looks so young, too young to be handling all that money. Linda figures on an adding machine, stamps my mother's deposit slip, then counts $70 into my mother's hands. Linda has done everything right. "Thank you," says my mother. She leaves, and when she gets home, she takes the 3 20s and 2 5s from her billfold and puts them with the other $280 in the envelope she's marked "Trip to Falls" in pencil in her tall, leaning print. We've already studied the map and haggled, and we have chosen Niagara Falls as our destination. To all of us, it sounded spectacular. Niagara Falls. It sounded like Fort Lauderdale or Ocean City, the places other kids talked about going on vacation. I thought a place as famous as Niagara Falls must be very far away, out of reach, but the map spread on the kitchen table showed that it wasn't. For the last part of July, as we waited for the money to arrive on August 1st, we got ready. My dead father watched us. Why not stay near the people he loved if he could? He couldn't speak properly of love anymore, since it meant for him something thinner and more elegant than the sloppy, unmastered emotion it is among the living. It was as if love, for us, had the properties of a liquid, took the shape of its vessel, was poured, spilled over edges, was wasted, while his was like that liquid in vapor form, tiny droplets, perfect globes suspended equidistant from one another in space, a uniform medium between his loved ones and himself. He watched as my mother collected tiny leftover salesman samples of toothpaste and cold medicine and Dramamine from my Uncle Tony's drugstore to save money. He watched as my mother put stacks of folded clothes on the steps for us to take up and put in our suitcases. He watched my mother and Tim go over the car, our big Pontiac Catalina. My mother pushed on the belts to make sure they were tight and squeezed hoses to see if they were brittle or cracked. Tim checked the air in the tires and added distilled water to the battery and the radiator. My father knew that the battery was fine. They didn't have to touch the battery. So on August 1st, when my mother returns from the bank with this month's $70, we and the car are ready to leave on our trip. Our suitcases lie open in our rooms, waiting for the last-minute items of toothbrushes, hairbrushes, combs, makeup. Tomorrow morning, we will leave. My mother puts crackers and peanut butter together and slips them into baggies for the ride. Elaine makes a pitcher of lemonade mix and pours it into a thermos. Later that evening, in the twilight, Tim stands in the driveway with the hood open and the engine running, listening carefully to the car. The next morning, we leave early, around 7. Tim is driving, and we only go 1 block to the stop sign on Sheridan before he realizes he's forgotten to check the air pressure of the spare tire in the trunk. "Oh," my mother says, "we better check it. You never know when you're going to need it." We drive to the Pennzoil station, and Tim and my mother take all our bags from the trunk, one by one, to get to the spare tire. I get out of the car to walk a circle around it, and I see our suitcases, mine and Marshall's from the old maroon set, and the rest from the newer gray set. I see our belongings together on the blacktop, and for all the time it has taken us to plan it and put it together, the bundle looks small, like almost nothing, surrounded by open space in the gas station lot. The air pressure in the spare tire, it turns out, is low, and Tim fills it up. My father, watching Tim, knows he is doing something important. He knows we won't need to use the spare tire on this trip, but that if Tim and my mother hadn't thought to fill it up, we would have. This is a joke among the living, that if you take an umbrella, it surely won't rain, but he's in a position to know that there is something behind this logic. It isn't strictly true, not in every case, but he knows of influences that honor humility and shame human arrogance. Seeing Tim and my mother make this one last preparation, my father is relieved, but when the relief passes, he will become dispirited. He will watch us 2 days from now as we walk single file on the wet wooden staircase that takes us down a cliffside close to the churning water at the base of Niagara Falls. We will look like everyone else in the long line of tourists wearing bright yellow rain slickers with Made of the Mist Tours stenciled on the back. The wood will be slippery, and my mother, right behind me, will tap my shoulder and shout something, but I will look at her blankly, unable to hear over the thunderous roar of the falls. She will pick up my hand and slap it onto the handrail and shout again, and I will watch her mouth move. "Hold the banister," she will be mouthing, her face and lips wet, shining softly from the spray. When she says banister, the word we use at home, instead of handrail, the word everyone here seems to use, it will scare me. I will picture the brown carpet on our stairway at home and our white banister, so unlike this deafening place, and I will think of the quiet creak I make when I go up our steps, and this place around me will feel like a threat, these jagged rocks sloping down to the river, the line of tall strangers in identical raincoats marching up the steps beside us, the weird rainbows, perfect circles and smiles that hang ahead of us out of reach. But I will grab the banister and train my eyes on the word "the" on the back of Marshall's coat as he walks ahead of me, and slowly we will make our way down to the viewing platform. Then, there, through mist The tremendous waterfall will fill our field of view, and its noise will obliterate everything else. I will know that above the falls, the river is just flowing, steady and undramatic. The ground under it is about to end, but it doesn't know. It goes along like any river. Then, just like that, it's in midair, flying down as if it's been thrown. The water is drawn smooth like a fabric by the speed, but when I follow it down with my eyes, I can see it flying into pieces. They burst at the bottom, part from themselves, the mist shooting upward and the rapids roiling below. Hold us, banister. My father will see us line up along the platform and look out from this brink. Tim, Elaine, Marshall, my mother, and me, wrapped in the rumble and mist from the falls, and he will know that to us, regardless of how hard he tries to make it not be so, this is a place without him, a place he's never been. I won't think of it this way until later, after we've made it home and are showing pictures of the trip to our relatives, but he'll know this now. From the viewing point by the falls, we will head back up the steps and emerge from the cloud of spray into the parking lot. I will be chilled from the mist, but my body will feel strengthened and calmed by the vibration of the platform. Marshall will wheel around and slap up on the visor of my baseball hat, and the hat will fly off, but Elaine, behind me, will catch it just above the pavement. But that is 2 days away. Now we are still at the Pennzoil station, where I have just walked a circle around our car. I knock on the window, and Elaine opens the back door and lets me in. I climb over her into my seat, and she gives me a spank on the butt as I go by. Ha ha, I say. We can hear thumps and muffled voices as Tim and my mother repack the trunk and slam it shut. We are ready. Lock all doors, Marshall says into his closed hand. All doors locked, I reply into mine. My father watches us drive away, down Park Street toward the highway that will take us north to Niagara Falls, with our spare tire full of air, our peanut butter and crackers, our thermos of lemonade, our $350 in the envelope marked Trip to Falls secure in my mother's purse. He follows. Thanks.